Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
And again, those lecturers out there are saying, oh yeah, no big deal, just do one at a time, and then they'll get to know you, and then they'll want to have the other work done. The only problem is they're going to be back in hygiene, you're going to find one more quad later, and none of you listening to this would do your dental work if you needed 8 or 9 things done, would do your dental work over 15 visits, 20 visits over 3 years.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bruce B. Baird, and you're listening to the Productive Dentist Podcast. In this podcast, I will give you everything that I've learned over the last 40 years in dentistry, working with thousands of dentists. I'll tell you, it's not that my way is the only way. It's just one that has worked extremely well for me, and I'd love to share that with you so you too can enjoy the choices and lifestyle that productivity allows. More time for things you love, increased pay, better team relationships, and lowered stress. Let's get into it with this week's episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.
Hi, this is Dr. Bruce Baird with Productive Dentist Academy, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up from our last podcast. I talked about case presentations and getting financial arrangements and how do those fit together. And my philosophy has always been about doing a comprehensive exam. What happens when you're not necessarily doing comprehensive exams? Let's say your new patients go through hygiene first, which I have to say, if I had a large PPO type practice, I'd have them going through hygiene first. The only problem with that is it's really hard to schedule time with you. It's really hard for you to come in on a busy day and spend the type of time necessary to build a relationship with a patient, even get to know what the heck their name is. I mean, that's, it's very difficult. That's not to say that there's not some super successful offices out there that do it. It's just not the way I chose to practice. I've said before, I want to work on my friends. But let's say your new patients and you don't have a lot of PPE, but they go through hygiene first. And I've seen that happen. And one of my statements would be, you probably have some pretty top-notch hygienists that have a lot of experience and that kind of know what you like to do. And so that can be helpful. I know that we had a 27% decrease in productivity when hygiene saw our new patients first. And the reason that happened was somebody sent out a marketing deal that said, come in for $180 cleaning, exam, and x-rays. I never approved it. It happened. That's what happens in the office when your systems break down. And all of a sudden, I started seeing the numbers go down. And I'm very active when it comes to evaluating what's happened in the practice. And the first month, I thought, okay, it's just a trend. I didn't realize we were even doing that special in hygiene. And then the next month it dropped more, and then the next month. And I said, what's going on? I really got into it and investigated. I wish I'd have done it a month earlier or 2 months earlier. And I found that, guess what? Patients were coming in just for a cleaning, and I hadn't had time to get in there to check them. And my associates were in there talking to them. And so I'm sitting here in this situation saying, gosh, it really affected me. What would the average treatment plan of a hygiene-driven production office be compared to one that's doing a comprehensive exam? Now, a comprehensive exam, I've told you before, our average treatment plan was $13,580. An average hygiene first type office is probably going to be in the 2,500 range. That's not to mean that you couldn't be at 6. And it's not to say that if you were seeing all your new patients, that your presentations might be 6, not 13. So either way, there's room to talk. But my biggest concern is the patient's well-being. And we know in the ADA Code of Ethics, we're supposed to tell the patient what's going on in their mouth. And I said last time, there are people out there telling people, just do one crown and see how it works. And then they'll trust you and they'll come back. A person, and I don't know if you're this way, but I am. I tend to be trusting. And if I like somebody, I trust them immediately. I just do. I love being around people who communicate, and I like getting to know them. And then we become friends. Now, have I been disappointed by friends? Well, sure, we all have. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to quit doing it this way just because one person, it didn't work out. It's like saying I'm never going to do my own in-house financing because 1 out of 10 defaults. When in fact, I know with interest, I'm going to make a whole lot more money going that route. So kind of going back and looking at this hygiene-driven type practice. And it's, to me, it's unfortunate, but it's also fortunate for us at PDA because I think I can help you get out of that situation. But the average treatment plan is $2,000, $2,500. Well, when you're at a $2,500 treatment plan, guess what? Insurance becomes very important. It becomes extremely important. If you're doing a $13,500, insurance becomes no problem. I'm just going to say, yeah, your insurance is going to cover $1,500. I don't have to worry about it. In our office, when patients say it, it's just because they don't know what else to say. What will my insurance cover? It's going to cover $1,500. And we've got great financial arrangements that we can go over with the patients after they've accepted treatment and said, yes, that's what I want to do. And then how am I going to pay for it? That's the next question. So when I'm sitting here talking to a hygiene-driven practice, you're only doing $2,000 to $2,500 treatment plans. A crown here, maybe 2, and I'm not going to talk the PPO angle of that because you might have to do 4 instead of just 2. But you're not having the time to actually do a comprehensive exam. So it's always, I'm going to do a quad evaluation. You come in, which quadrant's the worst? So it's much easier to talk to a patient in a tight environment, in an environment that often runs behind, which runs your chairs behind. And we're the ones who usually cause our hygienists to run behind. So you kind of combine those things, and it's just not a good environment to go over what are your needs. I really wouldn't want, again, my heart guy to tell me in the middle of a 1-minute exam what's going on. I'd rather have time. And truthfully, it doesn't take that much, but it's truly scheduled time with me as opposed to I'm coming in when I can and I'm going to do the work. Now, what kind of financial arrangements are good for those type patients? Again, we're Compassionate Finance coming out with a new software called Accept Care, and it's going to be pretty straightforward and easy. They're not, for you that have hygiene-driven practices, it's going to be easy because you just say, this is what I would do. You print up the information. If they need financing for that, it's going to be $2,800. If you need financing, these are your options. And it prints it out perfect. You get to look at this option here, and this option here. I still, because you're doing small treatment plans, you really do have to be concerned with how much your insurance covers. So, having some insurance verification ahead of time, there's no reason why your hygienist every morning should know all the details of each one of their patients that day about their insurance. Oh, you have insurance that doesn't cover major procedures for 2 more years. You have this that pays for ortho. And the whole team should know that as far as that's concerned. So once you have that accepted, once you know what they have, then it's very easy to have the conversation. It doesn't take long. Hygienists always go, gosh, I don't have the time. And I understand that. You don't usually because your doctor's running behind, getting in to see you. And then it puts you behind. And then when do you catch up? Lunch. Then when do you catch up? The end of the day. This is commonplace across dentistry. I think it's totally avoidable. I don't think you have to be living in that type of a life because it's stressful. And when things are stressful, what happens to productivity? It goes down. When things are not stressful, what happens to productivity? It goes up. I remember, when I was running behind all the time and doing all this stuff 25 years ago, I would actually downgrade. I had them scheduled to do 2 crowns on the upper left and 2 crowns on the lower left. And I was running so far behind, I said, Bob, why don't we just do these 2 up on top this time? Why? Because I wanted to try to catch up because I hate being behind. So these are the things that I look at. I just want you to realize the difference in those 2 practices. The hygiene-driven practice really has lots of single teeth and quads that are diagnosed, but not a full mouth. And it puts a lot of stress on the hygienist to find more dentistry for me. You guys ever heard this? There are consultants out there that go, I need you to find dentistry. Let's start paying attention to the hard tissue. Let's look at those cracks. I don't have to worry about that in my practice. I mean, I do a comprehensive exam. I tell them the first time I see them about the cracks. I tell them about the reason for the cracks. I tell them, there's somebody who bites like me, at 1,000 pounds per square inch, not like the normal person at 185 pounds per square inch. I've explained to them why things are happening in their mouth. Really hard over here in the hygiene-driven practice because you don't have the time to tell them. The hygienist doesn't have the time to tell them. And your dentistry becomes, I'm going to say it becomes piecemeal. You're going to do whatever it is. And again, those lecturers out there are saying, oh yeah, no big deal. Just do one at a time. And then they'll get to know you. And then they'll want to have the other work done. The only problem is they're going to be back in hygiene. You're going to find one more quad later. And none of you listening to this would do your dental work if you needed 8 or 9 things done, would do your dental work over 15 visits, 20 visits over 3 years. Because what happens is it gets worse and it becomes more costly. There's nothing that kills me more than seeing a patient who's just been strung along and is paying so much more than if they just did it right the first time. And that's the belief you have to have internally to have the kind of practice that I think you dream about. I certainly dreamed about a very low stress practice, one that I didn't run behind in the morning. I didn't run behind at night. It was extremely profitable. I was able to do lots of charity cases because it was so profitable. My team was 100% engaged. I loved going to the office. Now, that sounds like a utopia. And if you had asked me 25 years ago, I'd have said, you are nuts. Can't be done. Well, I can tell you, not only can it be done, it's being done all over the country with practices that are engaging with this comprehensive exam strategy and with this communication strategy. And we've taught thousands at Productive Dentist Academy over 18 years on how to do that, how to have that kind of practice. So anyway, that's another Productive Dentist podcast. I hope it's been interesting. I hope it's been something that's engaging your mind. We have the workshop. So I would tell you, hey, get signed up. And who should you bring? Well, everybody you want to keep. And I hope to see you at a PDA workshop in the future. So have a good holidays. Thanks.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe. Pass it along to a friend. Give us a like on iTunes and Spotify, or drop me an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. Don't forget to check out other podcasts from the Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentistpodcast.com. Join me again next week for another episode of the Productive Dentist Podcast.